What's up guys, Shawnthebro here, and we're back for another episode of the fighting game tutorial series. So in today's episode, we are going to be going over cleaning up and improving our hitbox actor and hitbox in general. For those of you that watch the series regularly, you'll know we've been cleaning up a lot of things lately from our animation blueprint, our game mode, our character, because we've done so many episodes in the series and sometimes we've implemented hacks, sometimes we did things that weren't as optimal as they should have been. So we've been doing a really deep dive and cleaning up a lot of things, and I want to keep doing that today. So specifically I want to do it for the hitbox actor blueprint and the hitbox actor in general, because I want to convert a lot of the blueprint logic to code. That way it's more efficient and we have more control over it. Now you'll know that I was working on the game mode and that was in progress. I wasn't finished with that yet, and we swapped over to the animation blueprint because there were things I wanted to move to the game mode from the animation blueprint. But I wanted to clean up some of the NMBP stuff before I did that because that influenced the logic. And now I'm at the point where I want to clean up some of that stuff in the animation blueprint. However, to do that, I really should clean up some stuff in the hitbox actor. So it has been a chain, but we are going to be swapping over to cleaning up the hitbox for that reason in today's episode. Don't worry, I have a plan. We are going one step at a time and making sure we clean up everything so that by the end of this, we have a really nice fighting game template or project. But before we hop into this episode, if you want to get caught up in the entire fighting game tutorial series and see how we've done things like our throws, our combos, our match flow, I'll link you to the entire playlist right here in the top right corner so you can check it out and get familiar with the series. Alternatively, if you don't care about the entire series, but you do care about having clean blueprints, hitboxes, you want to improve your system or your game, feel free to check out the other episodes on hitboxes that we've done. I do have quite a few of them, and I do feel that if you're familiar with our current method, our current system for the hitboxes, seeing us do what we're doing in these episodes will make a lot of sense, because you're seeing why the new logic that I'm implementing in today's episode is cleaner and better than the old episodes. So with that out of the way, we can go ahead and get started. Now this is a code and blueprint tutorial series, and since we are improving our hitboxes today, there is going to be movement from our blueprint logic to our code. So we're going to be working in both. The first thing we want to go to is our hitbox actor BP, or hitbox actor blueprint. So if we go to blueprints, functional BPs, hitbox actor BP. Now this is a pretty big blueprint. We use it all the time. Hitboxes are very important in our fighting game. There is a decent amount of logic in here. It's not one of the monster blueprints, but the actual collision and projectile logic is pretty big. So we will focus on converting that to code where useful and where necessary, but for today's episode specifically, I want to focus on the collision part of the hitboxes. And really, even to do that as optimally as possible, we want to convert our hitbox display and really our hitbox collider from blueprint to code, because up to this point in the series, the hitbox display is a static mesh component, but it's a blueprint component, so I can't really grab the data I want in the code without doing some other things to grab the value. If we created our blueprint component for our hitbox in the code, we could modify it there and use it there as we need to, and we know that none of our hitboxes are ever going to not have a collision component. If for whatever reason you wanted to have a hitbox that didn't have collision, you could just disable collision on it. So there's really no reason for this to only be in the blueprint version, and we can move this over to the code, which opens us up to doing a lot of the logic in here in the code, which will clean up our logic significantly. We also can do away with this default scene root. We don't need it. To make our lives easier right now, let's just do that. Let's move our hitbox display to our default scene root right here. Just override it. You're not really missing anything. It's still going to work the same. If we compile and save this, you see our hitbox display isn't seen here, but that's not a problem. If we come into our game, we can play, and you can see that I can go up to my opponent and hit them just like regular. That default scene root wasn't really doing anything. It was the parent root component so that we could place other components under it and group them in things, but we're not going to need that. We're going to set up our logic in the code for this. Making this adjustment here is just making it easier for us to do that. If we click on our hitbox display, we do want to transfer all this logic, so we do have to be careful and make sure we don't lose anything in this process. But when we're ready, we can go into the code and specifically go to our hitbox actor code class. So hitboxactor.cpp and hitboxactor.h. In our hitboxactor.h, we want to make a component that represents our collision. So to do this, we can go to the actual class here, and we usually put these in private. It is pretty standard for this. So you can have them wherever. Typically they will go in a private or protected spot, and then we'll have a getter for them. It really is up to you. I am going to start them in protected. That way we're already in the right spot for it. And I'm going to add a comment here, the static mesh, and we'll say static mesh component of the hitbox. Now, components are typically uProperty. Common one would be visible anywhere. You could do edit defaults only. This means that you can edit them in the class default section, but you can't edit them in a graph. I am going to give full permissions on this one, edit anywhere. Then we have blueprint, read, write, just so we can edit it and access it within the blueprint. Graph, we can get it and set it. Then we have the category, which we can just say hitbox. That is enough. I'm going to do meta equals parentheses allow private access equals true. And actually, it is quotes around the value, not the title. So meta equals allow private access equals true just means that we can still do these things like edit anywhere in blueprint read write, even though it is in protected or private. At this point, we can make our actual component here. Static mesh component pointer, and we can call it hitbox display if you want. I'm going to call it hitbox mesh. I know it's been called hitbox display throughout the rest of the series, but I think hitbox mesh makes more sense here. And I'm making it a mesh instead of a box collider or something like that so that I can do my own logic to it. If I want to have a box or a sphere, which in our case we actually do, we have our 2D hitboxes and our 3D hitboxes. But it could be more than that. We also may want to put our own spin on it that's a little bit more complicated than something like a box collision. So I think a static mesh component is still good to have for our hitboxes. I don't think we need to change that. But now we have our mesh in here, and I've called it hitbox mesh, not hitbox display, so there won't be any conflict between those variables. If you keep the same name in your C++ component as you have in your blueprint for that component, they will conflict, and then you'll get an error, and you'll have to remove one when you go in there. It's not really a big deal. You've probably seen me do it before, but just be aware that you will have to get rid of that blueprint component and replace all your references. And now that we have our component in our hitbox actor, we can go to hitboxactor.cpp and go to our constructor, set up components. I want to say hitbox mesh equals create default sub object. Angled brackets, inside of here we have to choose the type. We know that it's going to be a uStatic mesh component. This will just match whatever type that you have here. You don't need to make it a pointer, just make it uStatic mesh component. So whatever our type of our variable was, we had a uStatic mesh pointer. We want the base type without the pointer. So just uStatic mesh component. Then we put parentheses, and in here we can pass in the name of the component if we want, the display name, so that when we're in the blueprint we can see it. And I like to just pretty much call it the same thing, but feel free to change it if you want. So I'm going to call it hitbox mesh. And Unreal prefers if you pass it in as text like this. You don't have to do that because it is actually a text type. It is not a string. So we should follow that and do text, parentheses, hitbox mesh, and parentheses. At this point, we don't have anything to attach it to. It will be the root component. It's how we set it up in the blueprint. So we can just simply type root component equals hitbox mesh. So root component is a component that Unreal has by default for actors, which a hitbox actor is a child of actor. So we do have access to it. And so this just means that the root component will be our mesh, and that's exactly what we want. Now there's more things we can do with this, but let's actually go into the editor and just make sure we can replace everything appropriately. That will be our first step in cleaning up our hitboxes. So now we go back into our hitbox actor BP. We can go to our new component on here, hitbox mesh, and when we do so, we can go ahead and set all the same fields that we set on the hitbox display, or customize them if there's anything you want to change now, but I'm pretty much going to be just transferring it over one-to-one. So if we click on our hitbox display and take a look at all of our fields here, you have our scale, we have our mesh, we have our material, and I'm just going to mimic all of these. So you saw me copy the scale, and I'm finding my cube mesh that I have in my game, and then I'm going to apply my proximity hitbox material onto that. And then we'll keep looking at hitbox display, and the next one is the simulate generate hit events. And we can actually disable this in both the hitbox display and our hitbox mesh. This is for physics collisions, physics simulation. And we don't have that for our hitboxes. If you do have that for some reason, of course keep that in, but we don't need it, so I'm just going to toggle that off or keep it off. We're setting can character step up on to no, and we're setting the collision presets to overlap all. Then we're marking it as invisible or visible false by default. Once that's done, we can start changing out the hitbox display for our hitbox mesh, and then get rid of our hitbox display, and we'll have our C++ component for the display of the hitbox or the collider of the hitbox in code, ready to go. Again, there's going to be more that we are going to clean up here, but this is just one step, and component transfer from blueprints to code is always a little bit of work, but once we have that, it makes our code class a lot more powerful. So you can see I've been finding all references on my hitbox display, and then I've just been replacing it with hitbox mesh. So whatever hitbox display is plugged into, just plug hitbox mesh into it and remove hitbox display. That way we're getting rid of all of our references, and I'm just going to keep doing this. Once I knock out a big section of them, I'm going to find references again. That way I don't miss any, and I'll make sure I get all of them. When there are no more, I know I've replaced everything, so at that point I can remove my hitbox display. Now we have no more references for our hitbox display, so we can remove it and make sure everything compiles and saves properly. And once it does, we can start testing. So we'll go into our game and make sure that it works both in practice and versus. That way we can see it and it looks correct, but then also just using it works as expected. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of cleaning up our hitboxes and improving them, part 1. If you did, please subscribe so that you can check out the future episodes where we're doing this. New episodes every Sunday. I want to give a huge shout out to my YouTube membership, Patreon members, and Discord subscribers for giving me that love and support. I am so grateful for you, and I'm so happy you're enjoying this series. It really is a blast to work on and learn from, so I hope you guys are enjoying it the same amount that I am. If you ran into any problems while following this tutorial or doing any of the conversions from blueprint to code, feel free to join the Discord community. There is a link in the description, and I would be happy to help you out with anything you ran into. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Shawnthebro, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, guys.